Getting clear professional sound on your podcast isn't about buying a $1,000 mic. It's about a few simple adjustments in how you use your mic. And when you skip them, your show instantly sounds unpolished and unprofessional. And guess what? Your listeners don't care what mic you bought. They're not thinking about your setup. They're not analyzing your gear. They're asking one question subconsciously the entire time. Is this easy to listen to? If your audio is distracting, inconsistent, echoey, or even hard to hear, they don't sit there and troubleshoot it. They just leave. So when we talk about better audio, what we're really talking about is removing friction, holding attention, and making your content feel effortless to consume. That's it. So today we're breaking down the mic do's and don'ts that separate amateurs from pros and how to get great audio without overcomplicating your setup. But before we jump in, if you're working on improving your podcast and you enjoy topics like this, you'll love our newsletter. Every other week, we answer listener questions, share tools, and break down simple systems that make podcasting easier. If you'd like to check it out, head to simplepodstudios.com/newsletter or just simply use the link in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. When most podcasters think about improving their audio, they start in the wrong place. They think, I need a better microphone. But there's two other factors that bear just as much weight: how to use your microphone and the environment. So before we even talk about which mic to buy, we actually need to reframe the problem, because upgrading your microphone without fixing these two things is like polishing a turd. You're not solving the real issue, and we're going to get into that. But first, let's start with a quick comparison. Most people fall into one of three categories. You have your laptop mic, you have your standard mic, which is usually plugged directly into your computer with a USB cord, and then you have your premium mic, which is usually plugged into a recorder via a XLR cable. Okay, the laptop mic, this is where almost everyone starts. It makes sense, it's easy, it's built in, there's no setup required. But here's the problem. The mic is pretty far away. It picks up on everything, mainly the computer fan noise, and it has no polarity, which means it's not directional, meaning it does not reduce any background noise whatsoever. So what you get is audio that sounds distant, echoey, and noisy. Then you have your starter mic, and this is where things start to improve, but there are so many on the market. They're directional, meaning they pick up audio from one direction and block out noise from every other direction. They sit a little closer to your mouth, and they reduce the background noise significantly. And for most podcasters, this is more than enough. And then your premium mics. This is the mic that everyone thinks they need. And yes, they sound great, but here's what people don't realize. They require proper gain staging, which means you need additional equipment like a preamp, a recorder, the right cables, and if used incorrectly, it can sound worse than a $70 microphone. So the takeaway, a better mic doesn't necessarily mean better audio. Better usage means better audio. So let's walk through a simple framework to make sure that your audio actually sounds professional, regardless of whatever mic you're using. Think of this as like a pre-recording checklist, and we're going to get into the 7 deadly sins of podcasting. If you want to get into podcasting heaven and be sipping pina coladas with the likes of Joe Rogan, Alex Cooper, or even Andrew Huberman, then I suggest you do these things. So step 1, sin number 1, is your mic actually on and connected? And this might sound obvious, but it gets missed all the time. And here's what you need to do before every single recording. Yes, every single recording. It's going to be worth it. I promise. You don't want to have to look back and realize that you have computer sounding audio at the end of your recording session and need to redo everything. So do a quick scratch test. Lightly scratch the top of your microphone. Just like that. Why this works so well is that your audio, if it were being recorded through your laptop, will not pick up on that scratch. Only your microphone would. That's why I don't suggest that you just watch your recording software to confirm it's picking up sound. However, the other obvious thing to do is to check your inputs, and not just check your inputs on your computer, but check your inputs in the actual recording software that you're using. You want to confirm your mic, not your laptop, is being used. Which brings me to step number 2, check your computer settings. If your mic is plugged in, your computer might default to something else. So go into your computer settings, whether it's Mac or Windows, and manually select your microphone. Double check your recording platform matches that input, because this is one of the most common silent killers of good audio. So step 1, make sure your microphone's on. Step 2, make sure your microphone is connected. Super simple, easy to miss. Step 3, Get your gain right. This is where a lot of people go wrong. If your gain is too high, you get distorted audio. Your audio will clip. It will sound like this. And here's the sneaky part. If your audio is too low, your audio won't necessarily sound quiet. When you export your audio from where you recorded it, or you import your audio into what you're using to edit it, or you just manually turn up the volume in post, oftentimes it sounds correct. But what ends up happening is that all of those quiet elements get brought up as well. And this is usually the noise floor. And all that sounds much, much cleaner when you introduce gain via your original source, the microphone. A good rule of thumb, most platforms will show your amplitude. Use that as your guide. Aim for strong levels without hitting the red. We've all driven on streets. We know how traffic signs work. But you should be filling out the green and pushing into yellow whenever you're recording. Because remember, if your gain is too high, then you get distortion. Okay, step number 4, positioning and distance. This might be the most important piece. The piece that podcasters have control of. Too close and you get plosives. You know, those harsh p sounds. Also, your audio can distort again. Too far, you get echo. Your voice sounds hollow and distant. And then whenever you do any background removal noise in post, oftentimes your voice is buried within that background noise and it gets harder to remove the noise. The sweet spot is usually a fist distance away from your mic. A lot of people say to speak off axis, but that can get you in real trouble if you push your voice out of the polarity pattern. So I suggest just keeping it directly in front of your mouth at all point in times. And most importantly, stay consistent. If you move around while talking, your audio will fluctuate constantly, and you can add a compressor in post-production, which basically squashes the signal so the loud parts are quieter and the quiet parts are louder. But it's not the golden ticket, so just be mindful of your positioning while you're speaking. Step number 5 is to understand your mic's pickup pattern. Good podcast mics are directional, which means they pick up sound best from one direction and then reject noise from others. So if you're talking into the wrong side of the mic, your audio will sound off, even if you're using everything else correctly. A good rule of thumb is that most dynamic microphones will have their polar pattern come straight out the top. Think of a standard karaoke microphone, that's what that would look like. And most condenser microphones will have their polar pattern come straight from the side with the gain knob on it. So if you're unsure if your microphone is a dynamic or condenser microphone, just look it up. Otherwise, most dynamic microphones have an XLR extension, while condenser microphones have a USB connection. And step number 6, use headphones or earbuds. This is a non-negotiable for remote recordings. Oftentimes, it can be hard to convince a guest to buy a microphone, but everybody has headphones or earbuds. And here's what happens. Without them, your mic picks up on guest audio and you get echo and feedback. Meaning, when you export your track, you'll be hearing the guest audio. And you don't want that, because when you sync up your audio with the guest audio, you'll get feedback. You'll hear the echo from when they start speaking on their track versus when they start speaking on your track. So with headphones or earbuds, you can isolate your voice and that keeps the audio clean. It's a simple fix, but has a huge impact. And the last step, the last deadly sin here, is to control your environment. This is the piece that most people often overlook. Even with a great mic, your environment matters. Before recording, turn off fans, AC units, silence your phone, your computer notifications, close windows and doors. Eliminate any background hum. I think fans and AC units are the biggest culprit of this, but you might have a noisy electronic or something of the sorts. You don't need a studio, you just need a quiet, controlled space. So let's simplify everything we just covered. If your audio doesn't sound great, it's probably not your microphone. It's probably one of these. Your input settings are wrong, your gain is off, your positioning is inconsistent, or your environment is working against you. If you fix those, even a basic mic will sound professional. And if you want to make things easy on yourself, we put together a full recording checklist in the show notes, so you don't have to think through this every time. And better yet, use it as a resource to share with your guests to make recording easy for them. So remember, this is all important, because if your audio is distracting, inconsistent, echoey, or hard to hear, your listeners aren't going to sit there and troubleshoot it for you. They're just going to leave. Hopefully, by removing this friction, we can better hold your listeners' attention and make sure your podcast content feels effortless to consume. If you haven't already, give our podcast a follow so you can catch my next episode on why you don't need expensive camera gear that you can't afford. All right, until then, take care, and I'll catch you on the next episode.